Recording now. All right. Again, welcome everyone to the how to just relieve some stress or create a stress-free environment or as little stress as possible in your homeschooling environment. We know that a lot of different things have changed in the world today and everybody is kind of scrambling. Some of you on the call or some of you listening to this recording might be like me. You might have chosen to homeschool your kids, which I'll get to my story in just a minute. Or it could be that you're dealing with this current situation of how do I make the adjustments to the potential of having to school my children at home now, even though that was never your plan due to the current pandemic. There is that need. A lot of schools, and it's kind of depending on where you're at as to whether or not your school system may be doing part-time, your school system may be doing distance learning, your school system may be open, but you personally have decided you don't want your kids in that environment at the moment. So how do we make these adjustments? And there's a lot of stress and a lot of anxiety going on right now. So that's what we're going to talk about today. I'm going to share you my experience as well as the neuroscience and a little bit about how you can control your brain and therefore control the stress. All right, I'm going to go ahead and just start a screen share here and go to the PowerPoint and we will get right on going. And like I said, as you have questions, if you want, just put those in the chat room and we will address those towards the end. Okay, all right, let's get started. This is all about taking the stress out of teaching at home. In the beginning, it's very overwhelming to think about schooling your children at home, especially if that's nothing that you were ever used to doing in your life or in growing up. Maybe, you went to a traditional school. I know for me, I went to a traditional school for pretty much all my life. I did go to a private school, but it still followed the traditional things that you see in a normal school. So what I want you to do to begin with, and this is a tactic that I want you to take with you in every aspect of your life, every portion of your life, I want you to remember to just breathe. Little bit of neuroscience here. When you get stressed, automatically you start to shallow your breathing. When you shallow your breathing, you are strongly restricting the amount of oxygen that is getting to your brain. If you are restricting the amount of oxygen that you are getting to your brain, quite frankly, you can't think, right? So you get tense, your shoulders go up, and you start to close in on your rib cage. When you close on your rib cage, you simply cannot fully oxygenate your lungs. So what I want you to do right now is just take a deep breath. Place your hand, right or left hand, doesn't matter, right about your belly button, a little bit above your belly button. And I want you to breathe in deep through your nose for a count of 4. Breathe in. And breathe out for 5 through your mouth. Okay? Make sure that your stomach moved. If you are fully oxygenating your lungs, then you're going to feel your hands move. When you do this, you're re-engaging the prefrontal cortex of your brain, which is the area of your brain that is highly used when you are trying to problem solve, think outside of the box, do those types of things. So this simple technique is something that you should apply in everyday life to manage everyday stress. But it's going to especially come in handy when you're dealing with this new situation of schooling at home. Okay? As I said, there's all of this anxiety and all of these feelings of what do I do? How do I teach? How long am I going to have to be teaching? Again, you may be on this call or on this webinar knowing that you are homeschooling indefinitely, or that your plan is to homeschool, but you may be all of a sudden thrust into this because of the current situation. So how long is it going to last? What does it look like? How do I set up my home? Where do I teach? What's my schedule going to be like? How do I manage this with perhaps some of you on this call or listening to this call later on, you're working part-time or full-time. So how do you do all this? This causes a great deal of stress, and that's where that breathing and the stress management comes in, because we want you to have as little stress in this whole situation as possible, because the more stressed you are, the more stressed your kids are, the more stressed the entire situation is. It's just like this snowball effect. So we're going to go through some of those tips and tricks that I've learned over the years, as well as just the hardcore brain science, the neuroscience and neuropsychology that you can apply in your homeschooling journey or your teaching at home journey that is really going to help you. So give you a little bit of my background. These are my 3 boys on the cover of the book here. The oldest is, let me see if I can get my pointer. You can see my pointer here. This is my oldest. His name is Alex. He is now 32 years old, happily married. This is my second, Casey. He is 30 and happily married. And my youngest, Colton, he is 27. Now, I schooled the 3 of them for 16 years total, from kindergarten through graduation. There was even some college in there that we worked through. They actually went on site to college, but they did that in their high school years, and were able to do that because I did homeschool them. That was one of the benefits. And this was the book. Despite the sarcasm in the title, it is a really very practical book on how to teach, easy read on how to teach your children with their individual brains in mind, and how to create a brain-friendly atmosphere in your home that reduces the stress and anxiety that you feel. Now, I did push this book out in a couple of months, and my editor did not catch all of the the editing issues. I didn't edit the book. I hired someone to do it, and unfortunately there's a few in there. But nonetheless, I put into this book all of that information that I'm going to be sharing to you today. But today I'm going to do it in a nutshell, and we're going to move pretty quick. All right. The first tip that I want you to know and to remember, this is so incredibly important, is you got this. You got this. You are naturally a teacher as a parent. It just comes with the job description. Think about all of the things over the years that you have taught your children. From the time they were born, you have been teaching them. You've taught them one of the most complicated functions, to speak. That's incredibly complicated. And you taught them how to talk. You taught them how to walk. Just walking, all of the different muscle movements. Yeah, sure, it comes natural to a certain extent, but who helped them? Who held their hands? Who walked them through it, right? Who taught them how to hold a spoon? How to tie their shoes? It was you. You're a teacher. Own it. Teaching at home academics is not the principles of it. The concept of it is the basic same rules and the basic same activities that you did to teach them everything that you've already taught them up to this point in their life. So you got this. You got this. Don't worry. Don't think that I do not have teaching credentials. I did not go to college to get a teaching degree. And yet my kids did just fine. And they're very well-adjusted, happy adults. You don't have to have years and years and years of training to do what comes naturally to you. Now, I'm having an online course that actually has eight of these calls on it. So it's goes into much more detail, but in short, there's teachers' manuals. There are teachers' aids. If you are using your school system, there are teachers that you can pick up the phone and call. There are tutors that you can call to help you out. So you have tons of resources. You don't have to bear it all on your own. And it's naturally going to flow when you allow it to. Okay? So keep that in mind. Just kick that whole idea, I can't do this. Just put that out of your house. Get it out of your brain. Get it out of your children's brain, because you got this. You got this. Now there's a few tips, a few little tricks that are going to help it make it go a little bit easier, right? But in general, it's just an extension of what you've already taught your kids. Okay. Next point, know your options. Okay. Understand that just because your current school district has a certain program that they have set in place. That doesn't mean there isn't a lot of options. Now, what's happening, what Florida requirements are and what California requirements are obviously going to be different, but there's still options. When I wrote the book and I did a book tour the following year, I spoke at homeschooling expos throughout the United States and Canada. And no matter where I was at, there was more than one option. So know that their options are out there. If you don't want to work with your current school district and whatever they are offering you, that's fine. You don't have to. Go to an online school. For example, there's a school online, and I did not use this. I don't endorse it. I don't get paid to talk about it. I'm just letting you know that it's an example that you can look at. It's something called K-12. And it's one of those programs, online programs, that are free to very inexpensive, depending on which curriculum choice you choose, to you as a parent, and it's online. You're more the tutorer, you're more the person that stays there and everything, or that monitors it. Everything else is done online with teachers. So you have those types of options. There's lots of those options out there. Online schools where they actually will provide you with the curriculum, they'll provide you with the books, they'll provide you with the lesson plans, and you're just the guider, right? You just guide your children through this. There are charter schools. Now in California, there's different types of charters. There's charter schools that are Montessori type charter schools that have had to make adjustments due to the COVID situation because they were in-site schools. Or there's charter schools like the one that I used for the majority of the time that I schooled my kids that allowed me complete flexibility. Now, the charter schools are public school systems. So basically, you're paying for it through your taxes. Your tax dollars go to them. So it doesn't cost you to be a part of those systems. There's a certain amount of money that is dedicated from the tax dollars to purchase the curriculums, to do the field trips, to pay for those types of things. Now, again, it has been a while since I homeschooled, so I'm not completely up to date on all of those requirements, but in general, the charter schools are oftentimes a good option. The one that I used, and I did research to find out which one would fit me best, the one that I used allowed me to choose my own curriculum for each child. And that's important when I'm going to talk in a little bit about adjusting your teaching for each child based on their individual brains. Okay. But look into charter schools, see what charter schools are available. Look at, you can even become completely independent. You can literally file with the government as ABC school, Anderson school, Stafford school, Minkin school, whatever it is, and then you are completely independent. Now, you don't get any financial assistance in that particular situation like you would with charter schools where they pay for the books, but you still can create everything your own. And all of these options are open to you. Whether you are doing you're looking at continuing to do this homeschooling or teaching at home for the rest of your child's academic career, or you're just simply doing it until the school systems get back to normal. Whatever it is, there are options. So understand that you don't have to be stuck in that little box that you've been given by your local school district. Okay, keep that in mind. The next tip is that you really want to do your best to create a stress-free environment. Now, I know I'm talking fast, so you may be a little tense, so go ahead and take a deep breath again. I'm going to take a sip. I'm going to talk about hydration in a minute, but yeah, just breathe, right? Keep it as stress-free as you possibly can. And you're going to keep it stress-free by creating an environment or keeping the brain in mind, right? I want to tell you a little bit about this cool little thing called the amygdala. So here's the neuroscience. Shortly after I started homeschooling my kids, about 4 or 5 years after I started homeschooling my kids, I became a neuroscience buff. Like I'm an addict on all things brain, neuroscience, neuropsychology. very fascinated with this amazing, amazing thing in our head, right? And how it applies to the things we do and how we do them. And one of the things that I think is most interesting is what happens when the amygdala kicks into gear. So when you're looking at your brain, what a lot of people think of as the brain is they think of this area up here, right? This section of the brain that is the neocortex, so to speak. This is the section of the brain where we do our thinking, but a lot of our emotions and a lot of our automatic actions take place in all this whole subconscious area or the lower portion of our brain. The amygdala has a very unique job. Its job is to protect you under any circumstance. And it takes action in a nanosecond. You don't even realize it. So I always use the example of you have had dinner with your friends, with your family, whatever. You're leaving a restaurant late on a busy Friday night. You stayed until closing because it was that good. And you hear the owner or the manager lock the door behind you as you're leaving the restaurant. As you walk out of the restaurant, you realize, man, I had to park way down there because it was so busy. So as you're walking to your car, your brain notices out of the corner of its eye a shadow or something coming towards you. In that instant, before this portion of your brain works 100 times faster than the thinking portion of your brain. So you don't even know what's going on when the amygdala has hijacked it. You have absolutely no idea. What the amygdala does is it shuts down the non-life sustaining systems in the body or brings them to a very slow crawl. So your prefrontal cortex, which is a section of the brain up here that is responsible for higher thinking, it's responsible for problem solving, understanding consequences of actions, all of that shuts down. It shuts down your immune system. This is an interesting point. If you're under chronic stress, your amygdala is constantly hijacking your brain and constantly shutting down your immune system. It shuts down your digestive system because in this moment, to get you from point A of danger to point B of safety, you don't need to digest your food. You don't need to have the white blood cells attacking foreign bodies in your mind, because if you die right now, none of it matters, right? So all the amygdala is thinking about doing is taking control of the body and getting you to a point of safety. So by shutting down the prefrontal cortex, shutting down these non-life sustaining or these non-immediately life sustaining portions of the body, it can now use all that extra oxygen and energy and glucose and send it into your adrenal system. So it flushes the body with these neurochemicals, with the hormones, the adrenaline, the cortisol, the norepinephrine, so that you can now move faster than you've ever moved before to get from point A of danger to point B of safety. When this happens, you may get to point B of safety, take a deep breath, the amygdala says, okay, you're safe now, lets all the oxygen and everything go back to the brain, and you turn and you look, it was the manager that was following you down the street to give you the keys because you left the keys to your car on the table. You see how this works? So in that moment of stress, you're not thinking because the prefrontal cortex is down. You're not digesting, so you're getting a lot of digestive issues because your digestive system's chronically shut down. Your immune system, you're getting sick all the time. You're not feeling well. You're lacking energy because your immune system has been shut down. All of this is what happens when you're under chronic stress. You cannot have this happening if you are teaching your children at home. You don't have a brain. How can you teach your kids at home if you don't have a brain? Which is essentially what happens when the amygdala takes over, when your brain senses stress. So it's critically important that you understand what is going on in the brain. Because when you feel this happening, you can stop it. You can take back control of your brain by doing deep breathing and by thinking your way through the situation. Now, interestingly, the children don't even have a prefrontal cortex yet, so they can't understand consequences of their actions or do this higher thinking. You have to do it for them. So imagine if you're constantly stressed out, your prefrontal cortex is gone. The kids don't have a prefrontal cortex. It's a mess, right? So understand what goes on in these high stress situations. And this applies to anything in your life. A fight with your spouse, being stressed out about bills, being stressed out about anything. This is gonna happen. So know that you can take control back by just doing some deep breathing and just re-engaging that prefrontal cortex. What I want you to understand that everything that I'm going to be talking about today is really thinking outside of the box. You were raised a certain way. Society has a certain way that they view what schooling should be. And if we're trying to fit in that box, but our family does not fit in that box, it's not going to work for us. We're going to be stressed out, and that whole amygdala problem is going to happen. So we want you to think outside of the box. I want you to think differently than what you're used to thinking. All right. I want you to be able to really open up and think in ways of teaching, of setting up your system, of following a schedule that is not the norm. And all of that is going to help to create a much lower stress environment. That means thinking outside the box. So to help you think outside the box, we're going to do a couple of quick brain games, just really quick. We're just going to spend a minute or so on this because I got to keep my time going so I don't run over time. I want you to tell me, what does this word mean? It is, I guess, let me see, I'm going to have to unmute everybody if I'm going to get some input here. Can I unmute? Oh, I have to stop the share to unmute maybe. Let me see here. Can I do it this way? Unmute. Nope, I have to stop the share. Okay, how about if we put it in the chat? Nikki's saying, I don't know. I don't know what it is. Oh, I guess I need to move this out of the way so you guys can see it, huh? Any other guesses? Anyone want to put something in the chat? Okay, it is, wait a minute, maybe this is over here. Hang on, more chat. Let me see. Wait a minute. Come on, come back up. Ah, wasn't supposed to do that. No, I don't want to stop the share. This is good. Okay, wait, let me move to the chat real quick. A wind chime, Nate Dinah. No clue. I love that. I love that. It is, let me go back to the share and tell you what it is. It is made in China. Okay, see the word made, M-A-D-E, and it is inside of the word China, C-H-I-N-A. Gotcha, right? This is thinking outside of the box. See, we're taught to read left to right, and everything just makes sense. When you're doing brain puzzles, nothing makes sense. We're thinking outside of the box. So here's the next one. Let me go here. What do you think this is? And I'm going to let you just think it up in your head for a second because I don't want to lose the screen share and all that kind of stuff again. It is, she is underappreciated. So you see the word underappreciated, right? The word she is under the word underappreciated. Get it? So she is underappreciated. I encourage everybody to do brain games. Brain games are great, whether it's the how many squares are in this picture, or you know how to do words or Sudoku or anything like that. Do those throughout the day, especially when you are trying to focus solid on something. Your brain starts to lose attention. You have to wake it back up. You have to get it to function better. So do little brain games like that, but think outside the box. All right, moving on. When you are schooling at home, when you are teaching at home, whatever your options are that you have chosen, keep the brain in mind. This is my passion. As I said, I am a brain geek. And when you begin to understand the function of the brain, what the brain likes, what the brain doesn't like, you will have a much, much more enjoyable time homeschooling and less stress. So the first thing when you're talking about the brain is I want you to teach in a way that the brain likes to learn. The brain, it's interesting. John Medina wrote a book called Brain Rules. Wonderful book. Love it. Highly suggested as reading. Although I have had some people come back and say, Julie, your neuroscience books that you tell people to read are a little bit strange, or not strange, they're a little bit technical. But if you like those kinds of things, great book, Brain Rules, John Medina. In there, he says, if you want to create a school system or a learning environment that is directly opposed, that's the words he used, directly opposed to how the brain likes to learn, you would create what we have in the United States. These school classrooms in the hard chairs, structured with 45 minutes on each section or each topic, or 30 minutes depending on what age your child is, that is directly opposed to how the brain likes to learn. There's no movement. It's uncomfortable. It's very, those longer learning lesson times, not conducive to healthy brain. So what it does is it leads to a lot of frustration. A lot of frustration leads to what? Stress. Then the amygdala does its thing, right? So you want to teach in a way that the brain likes to learn. And what that means is doing lots of different fun things. Multisensory learning. I discuss this in the book, and I'm going to be discussing it and giving lots and lots of examples in the webinar series. But what this means is engage every part of the body. So you're not just sitting with a book and reading the book and telling your child, read the book, do the numbers on this page, right? That's just auditory. That's just auditory. Yes, reading is an auditory function. When you read, it is the auditory section of the brain that lights up the most in the brain. Think about it. When you read, what happens? You hear the words in your head. So reading is an auditory function. It's not a visual function, so to speak. So keep that in mind. You want to, that's just one sense. You want to try to create teaching or methods of teaching that engage all of the senses, right? So how can you engage the vision? How can you engage the tactile, right? How can you engage the body in movement? Movement is huge. It's huge. Even if you are just teaching, like, think about it. Some of the examples that I give is just doing hopscotch with adding, right? Do the hopscotch on the ground, put numbers in there, and tell the kids to add the numbers as they are moving. Because when you are engaging the motor cortex in the brain, you are using that much more real estate in the brain to learn a particular idea. The more sections of the brain that you use to learn a specific concept, the more portions of the brain you have to attach when you're trying to remember that concept, or when your child is trying to remember that concept. You can do games like concentration. Do you remember the hand game? I don't know how much kids do it now, but it was like concentration, right? And you did this whole thing with your hands. Well, you can do this with spelling, right? C-A-T spells cat. When you do that, you are engaging more of the brain. Plus, it's fun. The kids have a lot of fun with it. You can simply do it tossing a ball. Like, get a balloon or get a ball, and you're just tossing it back and forth as you're repeating words, as you're repeating mathematical equations. And this works with every grade level. It's just that what you're teaching is a little bit more deep or more complex, but walk around and let the kids walk and pace as they're reading their book, or as they're, practicing their math skills or their spelling skills, right? Engage movement as much as possible, as much as you possibly can. It's going to be fun. The kids are going to learn much faster. And if all of it is fun, it takes the stress off of you. Do things like experiential learning. Again, experiential learning is going to be naturally multi-sensory, but how can you teach concepts with really making an experience? So I use the example again in the book, and I'll teach this in even more in a deeper way in the webinar series, is teaching, like if you're teaching perimeter or area, the equations for perimeter or area or circumference or any of those things, square footages, right? Don't do it with a book inside the house. Do you know how boring that is to the brain? Right? Get outside. Give your kids a clipboard and a piece of paper and a measuring tape and send them outside. Tell them, we're going to put a fence around this area of the property. Let's go figure out what the perimeter is. Right? We're going to plant grass. Let's go figure out what the surface area is of the ground so that we know how much grass we need to buy. See, thinking outside the box, right? When you do things like that, you're making it experiential. You're giving it multisensory because you're engaging every portion of the brain. You're teaching them problem-solving skills, which is the best skill you can teach at home. And you're making it fun. And it's practical learning. Now they understand why they need to learn all of these equations that on a sterile piece of paper make no sense. Are you getting this? Can you see how much fun this would be? Can you feel the weight kind of, oh yeah, that would be great. It's an experience with your kids. Science. Think about science. Almost so many parts of science are hands-on. Even your measurements, anything math can be done hands-on. Take the kids when you're talking fractions, build a sheet cake or a sheet, cookie sheet, make the pan cookie sheet and cut it up into fractions. And then when you're done, you get the benefit of eating the sheet cookie, right? But make it fun. The kids are going to remember. They'll remember what halves are, what quarters are, what thirds are, what 7/8 is, because they just did it all. Not only are they engaging the motor cortex, but the smell. Oh, there's so much neuroscience. Oh, I wish I could spend a whole hour, a whole webinar talking about the neuroscience and aromatherapy and what it does to the brain. And there's experiments being done with infusing certain smells in the classrooms and how that increases testing rates. Just lots of fun information. I don't have time to go into it all now. But the point is when you are engaging the whole brain, the brain is making multiple connections to that thing that you are teaching, and therefore it learns better and it holds on to it better. Make sense? Okay. All right. Individualize your teaching as much as possible. Now, this is a very complex concept, so I'm just going to touch on it. Again, the webinar, I go into the difference between the right brain, the left brain, the anterior, because there's even a difference between the anterior. See how we have this fissure right here? That separates the anterior lobes from the posterior lobes, or the front from the back of the brain. So your anterior brains are different than your posterior brains. There's different things that are learned in different sections of the brain, and each of our children, according to Richard Heyer, who did all these fancy PET scans of the brain, he identified that each one of us has the ability to use one of these 4 quadrants, just one, so either here, 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 or here, with a greater amount of ease, like literally less glucose, less micronutrition, less oxygen uptake when thinking, when using that section of the brain. This is part of what I call the brain personality connection. So when you're able to individualize your teaching to the brain of that child, it makes a huge difference. There is a difference between the brain. I'm sure that Kelly and Isaac can attest to this. There is a difference between the male brain and the female brain of a child, right? Something very interesting about the male brain is at 6 weeks gestation. So when you are pregnant as a woman, if you are pregnant at 6 weeks gestation, if the Y chromosome is present, if this is a little boy, the brain gets a chemical bath. That chemical bath changes that brain that is inherently female up to that point into a male brain. And what it does is it slows or retards, if you will, the growth of the left side of the brain. So little boys come out right brain dominant. They may be left brain adults once they go through different stages of hormonal flushes in the brain as time goes on. I know there's a lot of information there, but they come out right brain dominant, which means they have to, do you know where all the math and spelling, or where spelling and reading, all of that language, it's all over here on the left side of the brain. It's either the Broca's area up here in the front left, or it's the Renwicke's area back here in the back left. So little boys are going to learn at a different rate, and they're going to learn differently these basic concepts in school. Reading, writing, spelling, all of that is going to be different for a little boy than it is for a little girl. It's going to be different for a right brainer than it's going to be for a left brainer. Then there's the auditory, the visual, and the kinesthetic. Kinesthetics have to get their hands into it. They have to experience it. They have to go make those cookies, right? And there's all kinds of things you can do, from teaching them the alphabet by having them write the alphabet in flour or in sand, like literally getting their fingers into it, to going out and doing, like I said, the hopscotch or the jumping or the walking when they read, or whatever it takes to make them comfortable. It's different for a kinesthetic than it is for a visual. The visuals have to see the picture in front of them. They have to have it drawn out. The visuals want to see the map of how to get from point A to point B drawn out with the little trees and the little roadblock markers, right? Whereas the auditory, they just need the words. So very different between each of them. And only about 20% of the population are auditories. So most of the, especially if they're male, most of them are going to be either visual or kinesthetic. So think with the brain in mind. Again, it seems very complicated, but in reality, when you start to make these little tweaks in the way that you teach your kids by identifying what their natural brain gifts are, it's incredible how much stress begins to lift up, because you're not trying to get the square child to fit in the round hole or the round child to fit in the square hole. Does that make sense? It is not, teaching is not one size fits all, not when it comes to the brain. So when you start to be able to, as much as you can, individualize some of that teaching, then it is really going to change how rapidly your kids learn, as well as how much fun all of you have while you are doing it. Okay, does that make sense? Big difference, big difference. So if you can, try to individualize. Keep the brain in mind. The book has details on that. The webinar will have more details on that. Jump in with us on those if you're interested in it. Okay, schedule. Be flexible. Be flexible. This is one of the biggest things that when I talk to kids or when I talk to parents, we have this in our mind. I used to drop my kids off to school at 8 a.m., right? So that they could start their school day at 8:30. You don't have to do that. And as a matter of fact, it's not healthy for the brain at all. It's not healthy for the brain. When you look at, I like this infographic, although I've seen the 12 to 18 years a little bit higher, as high as 10 to 11 hours of sleep per night. But where are the kids that you're teaching? Where do they fit into this? Look at how many hours that they need of sleep. This is a sleep infographic. Okay, sleep on average, right? Your kid may vary one way or the other. So where are your kids at? Are they in this range? Are they in this range? Are they in this range? And like I said, I believe that the 12 to 18 years is a little bit higher. But what's really interesting, if you have a teen at home, what's really interesting about this age group is that because they're going through so many hormonal changes, one of those changes is melatonin release. So basically what makes all of us get tired is when the brain starts secreting melatonin. Now, it is triggered by the pineal gland, which is like back here. It's right about here, but behind the forehead, right? And so what happens is when light enters into the eyes, your pineal gland is not producing melatonin. If it's working properly, as soon as it starts to get dark, then the brain goes, oh, it's time to sleep. So the pineal gland triggers the production and release of melatonin in your body, and that puts you to sleep. This is, by the way, if you have sleep problems, this is one of the reasons why I drop those technological devices. Do not have them like this when you're trying to go to sleep, because chances are you're preventing your brain from producing the melatonin to help you go to sleep. So that's what happens. That's the cycle that happens in the brain. For some reason, well, I shouldn't say for some reason, it's because all the hormones in a teen are all over the place, right? Their circadian cycle is different. The melatonin is not released like it should be when it starts to get dark. So at that 8 or 9 or 10 o'clock in the evening hours, right? Their melatonin may not start to produce until sometime around midnight, according to a lot of studies. Now, if they're, think about it, if they're not starting to really fall into sleep until midnight because of this hormonal situation in their brain, and they need 8 to 9, I feel 10, because some of the studies that I have read said that 11 a.m. is the best time for a teenager to start schoolwork. So think about your schedule. Just because in the school system they started school at 8:30 doesn't mean now that you're teaching them at home that you can't wait and start them until their brains are awake. Don't make them start to do schoolwork until their brains are ready to do schoolwork, or else that's just going to do what? Do what? It's going to cause you stress, because they're not going to want to do it because their brains just simply aren't awake yet. Right? And this is a really good thing to keep in mind if you are a parent who is working as well. So if you're trying to figure out, how do I juggle school when I'm at work, right? How do I help them school when I have to go to work? Well, think about your hours. You might decide that you're doing work in the late afternoon evenings, doing schoolwork late afternoon evenings instead of morning. There is no rule that there's no biological rule that says you have to do schoolwork first thing in the morning. That was created for school systems and for the ease. Okay, so think about that. Be flexible with your schedule. All right, the setup itself, be very creative about it. What I mean is, where are you going to set up your school? Now, we did have, when I did school, we did have a specific place on the back porch areas, where we called it in the house, where there were the 3 little desks. And in those 3 little desks is where all of their school books were, right? And that was to keep it organized. Very rarely did my kids ever do schoolwork sitting in these hard chairs at their desks. These aren't actually their desks, but I couldn't find a picture of their desks for the PowerPoint. But the point is that is not a comfortable place to do schoolwork. So you can do schoolwork anywhere. Remember, I said take it outside, do it in the kitchen. They can do it at the dining room table. However, for your sanity, especially as a mom, do not allow all of that schoolwork, because you have to protect your stress level in your brain. Do not allow all of that schoolwork and school stuff, right, to remain all over the house. Put it back in the desk at the end of the school day. You don't want it constantly being on the visual mind of your children. You don't want it constantly being thrown at you. When school is done, school is done. Put it away. Get it out of sight. That alone is going to take a lot of stress off of you. So while you have your designated place where you set up for the books to be stored, and the pencils and the scissors and the crayons and the paper and all of that, you can do your schoolwork anywhere, but when you're done with the schoolwork, get it out of sight so it's not a constant reminder of what you are doing here at home. Does this make sense? It's like having that dirty load of laundry sitting in the middle of your living room. If it's sitting there, it's constantly stressing you out because you know you have to do it. You want to walk away from it. You want to walk away from school. You don't want your kids to constantly be thinking schoolwork, right? Make it easy. Do the setup. Be very flexible. Do your schoolwork wherever you possibly can. The kids do not have to do it in a sitting position. As a matter of fact, about the only schoolwork that my kids did when they were sitting at a table or sitting at a desk, pardon me, let me get a drink, was when they were writing, when they were practicing their handwriting or their words that they were learning. All right, that was about the only time, because that's about the only time that you need to be in that position. When we did anything that involved reading, Colton, who was the kinesthetic, the youngest one in my family, he was about like this. Like, he was all over the place, right? Kinesthetics, they have to be comfortable. As a matter of fact, I need to dig up, I've got all my old pictures. I need to scan them onto the computer, because when I did it, we didn't have camera phones, right? They're all printed pictures. But he did a lot of, I would oftentimes, when it was time for him to do his reading or read his history book, he would go out to the goats. We were raising pygmy goats at the time, and he would go out to the pygmy goats, and he would sit there on the rocks out there because he loved animals and he loved nature. And that is what worked for his little brain. And that is what you want to do. Because what they learn in an environment where their body is comfortable, where their brain is comfortable, will stick with them so much longer. So much longer. I mean, how many of you have things and bits of information that you know you learned as in school, but you don't remember it now? You don't remember it now because your brain didn't find it important and your brain wasn't comfortable when it was learning it, right? So that's where this benefit comes in. Get outside of feeling that you have to have your school system at it or your teaching at a desk. Do it wherever. Be flexible. Be flexible with your schedule. Be flexible with the way that you are teaching and the atmosphere or the area that you allow the schooling to take place in. All right. Create a brain-friendly environment. What does that mean? What does that mean? It means put it in an area that's going to encourage the brain to learn or help the brain learn as much as possible. One of these things is taking breaks often. Interesting, I believe, you know what? I think this was also John Medina in his book, Brain Rules. When you graph or you line chart out the way that the attention, the way that the brain pays attention, it's very interesting. For the first 15 minutes, it kind of goes like this. I don't know if you can see my hands up in the corner or not. It kind of it drops at a very slow slant, very slow degree of decline for the first 15 to 20 minutes of attention span in the brain. Then from your 15 to 30 minutes, the angle of that decline of brain attention span gets sharper, drops faster. After 30 minutes, it's like it's like a nosedive. So it has always just amazed me. As soon as I found this fact out, it was like, why do we have 45-minute? And this applies to a 15-year-old just as much as it does a 5-year-old. There should never be a 45-minute class, ever. Ever. If you're doing 45-minute lesson time, then you have to break it up in 20-minute spaces or 20, what is that, 21 and, I don't know, 21 and 3/4 minutes. I don't know. Can't do math that fast off my top of my head. Anyways, you have to do something. So take that break at 20 minutes. Do some deep breathing. Have your kids do some deep breathing. Let them run around the house, run around the outside of the house. I used to always tell the boys, get out, just go run out, run around outside for 5 minutes, for 10 minutes. Then come back. So if you're ever in a position in your classroom or in your studies, your whatever concept you're studying, where your child feels like you're hitting a brick wall, they're just not getting the concept, then do something different. Do something different. Jump to a different subject altogether. If they're having the difficulty in English or in reading, stop. Take a break. Hydrate. I'm going to talk about hydration in a minute. Hydrate. Do something that is going to let the brain refresh itself. Because if they're getting stressed, what happens? What's the amygdala doing? It's sucking all the oxygen out of the thinking portion of the brain, so they're not going to be able to think. So it's just it's not going to work. Break. Do 20 minutes reading. Do 20 minutes, get some water. Do 20 minutes math. Take a 10-minute run break. Come back. Do history. Then repeat the cycle. Do it in 20-minute school classroom things. And when you're teaching at home, you might find, like, for example, my oldest son, he was an absolute whiz at reading or at math. Like, math just really came well to him, so he didn't have to spend that much time on it. Anything very creative, he was able to spend basically he finished his schoolwork within 3 hours or so, all of his subjects, when he put his mind to it. And you may find that that's the same thing that happens for you. So you don't have to spend 45 minutes on something if it's only going to take 20 minutes for them to do it, right? Just break out of that mental box in thinking that you have to spend this set amount of time in certain subjects. It's not necessary. Those are boxes that the school system created, you don't have to jump in. So break often, make them little. Breathing, hydration, just a mere 2% drop in body water. So most people don't even realize they're thirsty at 2% drop. Creates difficulty focusing on a computer screen. How much of your work is being done on a computer screen now? How much work are kids doing on a computer screen? Online. 2% drop. Difficulty reading, difficulty spelling, difficulty doing basic math. All of that 2% drop. So hydrate. Constantly, whether it's having something for them to drink at their workstation or wherever you're working, or every time you switch a subject, hydrate. Water is incredibly important. Lots of less. I mean, it's what's helping to conduct that electricity in the brain, and that's all the brain is an electrical. It's just electrical impulses, right? So you have to keep it well hydrated, keep it moist. Move. Get up and stretch. Going from a sitting to a standing position alone. If you've been sitting for more than 30 minutes, which I should tell all of you, if you've been sitting, you need to stand up. Just going from a sitting to a standing position is going to increase the oxygen level to your brain by 10 to 15% if you've been sitting for more than 30 minutes. So never, I work with a lot of corporate clients, never, ever, ever sit for more than 30 minutes. You've got to get up and oxygenate your brain. So get up and go get that glass of water, right? Movement. Get the oxygen to your brain. Have lots of live plants in your school area or in your home, or we live in an area where we can have the windows open all the time to the outside. It's a little bit more difficult in the cold of winter, obviously, but get that fresh air. There's all kinds of interesting studies and tests that they have done on learning and the ability and having plants clear the air. Here's some of just a few statistics in buildings where they put the money plants, mother-in-law's tongues, and those are these 3 plants, right? Ficuses are good. And large leaf plants are good because the larger the leaf, the more they're filtering the air. 34% fewer respiratory problems. Do you have kids that have respiratory problems? Can you put more plants in the area? Eye irritation, 52% less eye irritation. If you're focusing on a computer screen a lot, you maybe your kids are going to have some eye irritation. We'll reduce that by having some plants in there. Fewer headaches by 24%. Right? Again, it's going to remove it whenever you're not feeling good, your stress level goes up, right? So this is all about lowering the stress. So can you incorporate fresh air into your learning area? I talked about aromatherapy a little bit. It is, and like I said, they're doing all kinds of, I believe it's peppermint is very good for memory. So you can literally just put a diffuser in your house, and that's going to help, burn the peppermint or diffuse the peppermint. Do some research on the different things. I've got a whole list. I couldn't go through it in this because due to time, we're getting close to the end of our time here, so I have to keep moving. But I can even get you that list. But I'll also go over it in a lot more detail in the webinar series of the different things that will relax the brain, will induce imaginative thinking in the brain, all with aromatherapy. Music. I've often told parents it's okay to have music playing in the background. You might not want to have, hard rock for those teenagers or angry rock, obviously, but there are certain types of music that literally, if you have it playing in the background, especially different types of classical music like Bach, different music that actually encourages brain function, and it puts the brain with more alpha waves, just kind of keeps the brain from getting too stressed out. Lots of things that you can do just in the actual setup of your home. All right. Laughter. Okay. I have to show you this. Hopefully it will play and you guys will be able to hear it. There are too many benefits of laughter to even begin to list. And what I encourage you to do, if you are getting tense with your child, laughter creates endorphins, and endorphins make you happy. So if you're getting stressed out and you guys are hitting a block wall, go play your favorite YouTube video, go play your favorite cartoon, play something for just a few minutes. It doesn't even have to be a few minutes, it can be a few seconds. Let's see if we can get this to play. awesome? It was so awesome. That was less than 20 seconds. Less than 20 seconds that I played that. I would dare to say that nobody didn't at least get a smile on your face. And a genuine smile, a Duchenne smile, which is called because the gentleman who discovered the connection was named Dr. Duchenne. When you smile, like a real genuine smile, it releases all kinds of, it changes, literally will completely change the neurochemistry in your brain. If you are stressed out, just simply that is going to help. So take laughter breaks often. Be cautious of your words. Words really do have power. There's a lot of interesting neuroscience on this. Negative words versus positive words with your kids are going to be huge. Like, don't ask your child out of frustration when they answered something wrong, why did you do that? That alone can trigger a negative neurochemical reaction in the brain. It can activate the amygdala, as opposed to going, you know what, that's very interesting. Can you explain to me how you got to that conclusion? See the difference? Positive versus negative. Constantly being positive. It's going to make a difference. Fill your house with positive words. I love stick-em notes. They are like, I could show you my office. I've got stick-em notes all over the place right now. I do a big 3-day event called the Mind-Blowing Life Transforming event. And towards the end of it, I have these, oh, I should have pulled them out. They're like, the papers are about this big, right? They're about half of the 5 by, I guess that'd be like 4 by 5 or something like that. Anyways, I will just have the audience members just start shouting out positive words. And I will take those positive words and I will put them all over the walls. And you can hear and you can feel, oh my goodness, silly. You can feel the difference in the tone. In the room, the energy just completely changes when you're just throwing positive words out there. So do that with your kids. Make that a regular exercise once a week. Let's sum up this week with positive words. Give me 5 positive words. And you put those words all around the area where you do your schoolwork. Remember, your words have power. It will change the neurochemistry in the brain. Make sure that the words you are using is changing it for the better. All right? Watch your body language. Kids are extremely intuitive, believe it or not. You roll your eyes, you tense up, they're going to see it. So constantly be reminding yourself, be positive, be positive, be positive. Don't even let my face expressions show frustration. And if I'm feeling that frustration, take a break. Go laugh. Go do something fun. Go outside. Get a breath of fresh air. Right? Watch every message. There's only about 15% of communication is the actual words that you are saying to your child. 85% is tonality, facial expressions, and body language. So watch it. Because everything you do is going to be reflected in them. I have a slide in here on mirror neurons. We'll get to it. Remind yourself it's okay not to be perfect. Look, don't think that you have to do it exactly the way that the teachers or the school system says you have to do it. You're not perfect. Your kids aren't perfect. Find what works for you, and it's okay. It is okay to do things differently. It is okay to think outside of the box. It is okay to do 15-minute lesson segments. It's okay. It's okay to only do 1 page of math and not 3. If they've got the concept in 1 page, they don't have to do 3. That's a rule that they set up to fit the masses. Chances are they will get, if they got it in 1 page and you make them do 3, they're going to get more problems wrong because their brain's going to drift. They're going to be bored with it. Take care of you. Whether you are a husband or a wife doing this, or you're doing it together as a couple, it is important to take care of you. Most of these pictures are going to have women in it because most of the time it is the woman that's doing the teaching. But it's very important to take care of you because, again, your kids are going to mirror anything that you do. Remember the stress response in the brain. You get stressed, they're going to get stressed. You get tense, they're going to get tense. So you've got to also remember to take care of yourself. right? They're going to mirror any of your emotions, anything that you're feeling. So manage your mindset. Have a positive, even if you're only having to do this for a few months or for a year, it's an adventure. It's an adventure. It's fun. Change your mindset. Think of all of the experiences you're going to have with your kids during this time, especially if you make it a fun learning environment that matches the brain. So change the way you're looking at it. Flip it. This is, how am I going to do this? Ooh, what creative ways can we employ? See the difference? Flip the way you're thinking about it. It's going to pay off for you, and it's going to pay off for your kids. I also definitely say, this is so important, is create your individual safe space. So whether it is 5 minutes a day, 10 minutes a day, a couple hours on the weekend, have a space, and I'm kind of grinning because I'm thinking of Kelly and Isaac, because they're in a very small home. Wherever that is, it's your haven. It's your space. And you make that time sacred. If you are getting to that point where you're doing this with your kids, go, you know what? I need my space. You guys go play outside. You guys go put together that puzzle. You play that game. Whatever it is, mom or dad, we need our safe space, and we need our safe time. And dads can help mom with that. Moms can help dad with that if it's a team effort. But create that space and honor that space for you, and make sure that your family honors it for you as well. Literally have a space that you can go where you can put on the relaxing music, do some relaxing aromatherapy, close your eyes, do some deep breathing, right? Have that cup of coffee, glass of wine, bottle of wine, whatever it takes. Set your boundaries. You know, that's why I said, take the schoolwork. When you're done with the schoolwork, put it someplace else. Put it in the drawer. Don't have, create those boundaries for yourself and for your family, that this is school time, but this isn't. There's a boundary here. We're not going to cross it. Weekends, we're not going to cross it. We're not going to pull the schoolwork out on weekends. If that's the perimeter that you present for yourself, stick to it. Create those boundaries. Realize that it's okay to say no. It's okay to say no to your best friend. It's okay to say no to your family members. It's okay to just go, you know what, I can't handle this right now, so I'm not going to do it. It's okay. You don't have to do everything. Get outside. Oh my goodness, there are so many, again, the figures on depression, people who walked for 15 minutes in a city setting versus people who walked for 15 minutes in green spaces. The depression figures, the percentages, 50% lower. Like incredibly big, huge reductions in depression and anxiety if you can get out and walk for 15 minutes a day in green spaces. Turn off the technology, people. We don't have to be glued to our phones. We don't have to be glued to our television. Read a book together as a family. Play a board game. Build a Lego city, right? Unplug. We can take a day a week or a half a day a week or 2 hours a week and just turn them off. Because if they're on, you're going to hear it buzz. As it drives me crazy with my husband. He never turns the buzzer off on his phone. So every notification from every email, every text message, 24/7, it's like, turn it off. The world is not going to come to an end if you turn technology off for 2 or 3 hours, right? Sometimes you just got to be still and soak in what's going on around you. That alone is going to help reduce anxiety. Take care of yourself, get the sleep, get exercise, take in your girlfriend time. No, I'm trying to think of the other name. All I can think of is John Medina, but the book that really got me hooked on the brain was called Head First, Norman Cousins, by Norman Cousins. And one of the things that they did in there, which was very interesting, was this study on support groups. There is an enormous amount of information coming out. There's some in that book. There's also Robert Sapolsky did some wonderful research out of Stanford University. There's another doctor and her colleagues that did another Bay Area of California study where they studied parents who had moms who were caring for extremely developmentally disabled children, and what was happening to the telomeres on their chromosomes. Okay, so the telomere is this protective section that covers the edge of your chromosomes and prevents the chromosomes from deteriorating. The faster the chromosomes deteriorate, the faster you age, right? So you want your chromosomes to deteriorate at the least, as slowly as possible. Well, their chromosomes were deteriorating 8 times faster than the average person because of the stress that they had in dealing with their situation. When they put these women who were caring for these high needs kids into a support group where they were meeting twice a week for 1 hour, the deterioration of their telomeres went down to average. So it went from 8 times as fast as normal to normal. And the only change that I made was having a support group. So have a support group, have your girlfriend time, have your buddy time. Co-op, this is also going to help you if you're one of those parents who are working full-time, who do have a lot of other responsibilities that they can't simply get rid of. And now they're having thrown on top of that schooling their kids at home. Create different types of co-ops. I know it's a little difficult and you have to get creative with the social distancing and all of that, but you can create a co-op where you are bouncing ideas off with other family members, with other parents. Perhaps you're doing more, like I said earlier with the sleep time, you're doing more in the evenings as opposed to the daytime and you're working with other parents, other adults, so the workload is spread out. Kids always seem to do a little bit better with people who aren't their parents. I don't know why that is, but it happens. Do things that make you happy. At the end of the day, do things that make you happy, that make your kids happy. Do not try your best to not allow this time of schooling your kids at home to take your happiness away. Because that's going to, guess what, in the long run, start deteriorating your telomeres at the end of your or the caps at the end of your chromosomes, right? So do what makes you happy. That's what you need to do. Take the stress off. There's no magic marker that you have to meet with your kids, right? Share that load. I mentioned that earlier. Share the load. Can you do a co-op? Can you ask your spouse? Start thinking out, doing some brainstorming, doing some mind mapping, try to figure out different ways that you can share that load with different members of the community or different members of your family. I did that a lot. So over here this is my husband and I down here in the corner. So sometimes it was my husband that he worked. So I did a lot of the books for the business, but he did the work, the day-to-day in and out of work. But sometimes on the weekends, hey, they're yours, honey. They're yours. I don't have kids this weekend. This is my mother-in-law. This is Paul's mom. Can you see the resemblance? She did a lot of, there were often times when it was like, Sue, I need a break. Can you take the kids for the day? And she would do it. Tara was a huge help. This is my sister. This is Tara and my niece, Sarah. Tara is my sister. She's my little sister. And at the time that I was homeschooling my kids, she was not married. And she would come up one day a week, most weeks, not necessarily every week, but most weeks. She would come up and she would teach them for the day. And I would go in the office and get done the book work that I needed to get done. Right? So do you have a family member that you can reach out to that can help share that load? Either while you are doing your secular work, or even if you don't have a secular job that you need to go to, you're just going to need the brain break yourself. So reach out to them. Do not think you have to do it all yourself. Remember the perfect slide. You're not perfect. Don't think that you have to be. So reach out, create that help system. Above all, have fun. Like seriously, have fun. Have fun, guys. This is time that you are going to be able to spend with your kids that you will never get back. That is one of the main reasons why I chose to homeschool my kids, was the time. I didn't want to lose that 30 hours a week that they would be in school. I wanted that time. Now you have the opportunity to do the same. Whether you're contemplating homeschooling, you're already homeschooling full-time and plan on doing that for their academic career, or you've been thrust into this tumultuous situation of having to do it because of the current COVID situations. Whatever it is, this is wonderful time, people. Time that you are going to be able to spend with the most precious possession you have on this entire earth, and that is your children. So use all of these little tactics, all of these little things to help remove the stress, to help reduce the stress so that you can have fun. Because this is time that you're never going to get back. So you might as well enjoy it. All right. We do have, I mentioned it a couple times, the Successful Teaching at Home webinar series that we're going to be doing. It is basically 8 hours. So we're going to be doing 2 hours a week. We're doing it on 2 separate days a week. Everything is recorded, just like this one's recorded. So if it's something you're interested in, I will be sending the link out. If you registered for this, you'll be getting an email from me with all the details in the link. I don't want to bore you with all the details here, but you will be getting those details within the next day or two of when that series starts. And the cost of the series, we're going to greatly reduce it. It runs for $97, but we're going to give a discount for those who are on this webinar now. So it's a lot of details on how to create the brain-friendly atmosphere at home, how to teach with the brain in mind, how to individualize your teaching for each of your children based on what their brain is. So lots of great information that'll be packed in that, as well as you get a copy of the book. Woohoo! So you'll be getting information on that. Okay, I am going to go ahead and I'm going to stop this share and we can do questions. I'm also going to go ahead and I'm going to